Mike Mansholt was 17 years of age. Mike Mansholt. Mansholt, sorry, I can't even speak. He was a boy from Germany. An extremely well-travelled boy, actually. His family, especially his father, encouraged like the art of exploration. Yeah, get out into the world and seeing things. Now his case was, I saw someone sent me this post yesterday, which was really kind of, how does a 17-year-old fall from a cliff with no broken bones and come home without his organs? That's what this case is, right? Now, we know that this happened in 2016. I'm going to give you the case now because it's a case that happened in Malta and it happened to a German boy. I've found this article that we're going to work from, which is from, it's called The Truth Be Told magazine. And we're going to work from this because I only speak very limited German. So in July of 2016, 17-year-old Mike Mansholt was found dead in Malta. His body was missing the internal organs and the cause of death is unclear. And this magazine, the reason I'm using them is because they actually flew to Malta with Mike's father to look for answers. So they have an inside working of the case. Hey, Julia. So let me give you a little backstory. So I've listened to loads of stuff on this last night. So Mike had done a lot of kind of travelling with his father. So even though he was 17, he was quite kind of versed on travel, and he had travelled to Malta with a girlfriend who had gone home a couple of days before this all happened. He was staying on a bit extra, and he was taking a break from schoolwork. And even though he was travelling loads and planning his next travel and training for a marathon in Iceland with his father, not the shop, the country. I just want to, there's always people in the comments who afterwards will be like, what? So yeah, he was going to go to Iceland for his 18th birthday to run this marathon with his dad. And his parents decided, because he was keeping up with his schoolwork and he was doing all the things that he was supposed to be doing, they had decided that he could go on this trip to Malta. Now, one of the last messages, hey son, one of the last messages he sent is, okay, I'm renting a bike and driving through Malta today. However, the roads are so steep, I'll send you a photo shortly. You can only walk up some of the parts. With the bike, it's not possible. It does not matter. It's a sporting challenge, and I love a sporting challenge. So that was the last voice note that he sent to his girlfriend, and that was on WhatsApp on July the 18th of 2016 at 9:41 a.m. Now, he rented a bike for 2 days, and he was supposed to return the bike on the 19th of July. He didn't return that mountain bike. And so around the 20th of July, we know the police in Malta started an investigation. However, they didn't contact his family back home, which is odd. And his family weren't alerted to he was missing really until the 22nd of July, when he didn't land at the Bremen airport as expected. So around 10 o'clock on the morning of July the 26th, a police search found Mike's body among the Dingley Cliffs. He was 17 years of age. And thank you, Kirsty. In 4 weeks, he would have become 18 and been in Iceland with his father. They found his body, if I find my pictures, down this cliff path. That's his body on the stretcher. He was so where the cliffs are, this is out-hanging edge, and he was found underneath the outhang, right, the overhang, which is absolutely technically impossible. You fall a cliff and then fall in this thing. And how he was found wasn't like in a mangled mess. He was found in what police describe nestled between two rocks, looking peaceful. He had no injuries to his face, not one broken bone, no kind of injury to show he'd fallen off this cliff. So at this point, his father goes over to Malta, hires a rental car, and he drives up to the cliffs because he's trying to find... he gets some flowers. He wants to go to the place where his boy died. He wants to see where it is. Now, where the cliffs are, underneath is this network of really bizarre caves, which just adds another really creepy layer to this case. There's these like a cave system, and it's all very bizarre there. Now, we're going to get into a little bit about what happened, because what police kind of are trying to say, this is him leaving his hotel, by the way, so the last ever shot of him leaving the hotel that day. What police are trying to say is that he rode his bike up there, he crashed the bike off nothing, and somehow flew over the cliff and died. But there's nothing up there for his bike to crash into or anything. There's no signs of, you know, a bike on the edge or hanging off the edge or any of those things. We'll talk about his belongings and that in a minute. So on the Dingley Cliff, there's always tourists up there. It's like this big, massive thing, right? These caves and everything else. People head there to see it. Now, we know on the day this all happened, there were no clouds in the sky. It was lovely and warm. There was no kind of weather issues. And we know that you go up onto the cliffs. After a few hundred meters, the trail ends into nothingness. And then there's a second path that snakes up. And we don't know kind of what path he took. No one says they saw him up there. Thank you, Yazzie. Mike was lying in a rock depression in two different rocks. And he was said to be peaceful by the police inspector. Now, I'm not sure how any boy falls off a massive rock and falls looking peaceful. I would think he'd be laying in an unnatural way, his body twisted, like, you know, the last thing you're going to describe a child, like really 17, looking like, oh, he looks really peaceful after having dropped off that cliff. Now, between the rocks, there are iron bars everywhere. The poles are screwed into the stones. It's supposed to kind of attract birds. It's kind of like there's loads of like jagged bits of the thing, of the rock face. His bike is a few feet up from him in a bush, and there's no damage to the bike. His sunglasses and trainers are a little further down. And a private investigator said he must have taken them off from the way they were placed. So they're placed. They're not like one shoe's over here, one shoe's over here, or they've fallen from his feet, which naturally in a fall you wouldn't expect your shoes to fall off anyway. Now, his backpack is gone. His GoPro camera is gone. Other bits of his property are gone. And police just say, well, you know, he's just fell. Now, he apparently fell off the summit, fell 29 metres. Are you mum? I am a mum, Tina, yeah. They reckon he fell 29 metres and 80 centimetres, which is such a weird way to put it. And it's really weird. His body lay under a huge rock ledge. The spot is not visible from the summit. And no one who crashes could possibly fall at this place. Thank you, Kirsty. The coroners find no fractures, no injuries, no major wounds. No, I'm a true crime content creator that gets justice for people and awareness. Mike's bike was barely damaged. It had one flat tyre. No, nothing else. Mike's backpack is missing. Never been found. So his father says, look, how could he crash? How could he crash, fallen off a cliff, fallen inside the cliff? He's got no damage to his body, no damage to his face, looks peacefully sleeping, not one broken bone. And his GoPro camera and everything that would be expensive in his bag is gone. So his father's called Bernd. He's called Bernd Mansholt, and he says, the police here are rude. I've been in Malta for the third time since Mike was reported missing. I want to know what happened to my son. They refuse to come and speak to me. The policewoman consistently rolls her eyes at me, and she keeps just trying to send me away. Now, when the corpse was transferred, and this is how it's put into the official report, it's forensic, okay, it's True Crime Life, so I'm going to use the words that are on there, and I hate using the word corpse because it's someone's son, and victimology means that I would never normally do that, but I want to talk to you forensically about what this report actually says. When the corpse was transferred to Germany and examined for a second time, he only weighed 35 pounds because all of his insides were missing. He was missing his organs, specifically his heart, his lungs, his liver, his pancreas, right kidney, adrenals, urinary bladder, prostate, stomach, small intestine, and his brain. So they send him back with, let me just list that for you again. He is missing his heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, right kidney, adrenals, urinary bladder, prostate, stomach, small intestine, and his brain are gone. The headache for forensic examination in Malta, Professor Mario Secchi and Mike said Mike had arrived at the morgue in the Malta D hospital without the organs. he had arrived at the hospital with no organs. He tried to say, okay, right, so they say they never took them out, right? They never took them out. They weren't there to begin with. They think that despite his body being almost pristine, peaceful, still wearing his clothes, they think that rodents had got inside of his body and eaten his organs, and the brain had just liquefied and disappeared. Hey, Tori. Now, they say due to the fact that he had been laying underneath that cliff for days, even though he was shaded under the overhang, away from everything, no wildlife activity was reported there. The rodents obviously have climbed 29 feet up, which I don't even know if it's possible, because I choose not to think about rodents in my day-to-day living because I don't like them. Now, a German forensic doctor comes forward and says complete liquefaction of a brain is not possible. It's not possible. The brain cannot completely liquidate, especially in this time period. In Germany, the doctors also said something else, that despite the fact that he had been flown home, they hadn't even embalmed him, which is illegal, because we know, like, say, the case of Josh that we covered recently, their family couldn't fly him back because he'd never been embalmed and he had decomposed so severely by that point they had to have him cremated. Nope, Lindsay. So they only opened him up after at autopsy, and they said by then the organs were already gone. Okay, so the embalming process not only keeps the body kind of fresh, not only means that it's easier to kind of fly them home and still kind of look at the body, but it is actually for health and sanitary reasons. So they have to do it for kind of hygiene, but yet they hadn't embalmed him. Now, Bernd Mansholt informed Siri of this contradiction by email, and he answered, so that's the guy from Malta, that the German physician is wrong. His dissectors did embalm the body using formaldehyde solution prescribed to my satisfaction, and he is a respected man in Malta and has won several awards for his work. There's a YouTube video which I found highly distasteful when he proudly sits and says, I did 29 autopsies on washed up refugees in just 3 days. I wouldn't be proud of that. I wouldn't be proud of the fact that you obviously rushed through doing 29 autopsies because you just consider them refugees. The fact that you had to make a video about that on YouTube is just weird. When Mike left the Astra Hotel in, I think it's Salma, is it Slima, in the morning of July the 18th, 2016, he was carrying a dark backpack. This is shown on the hotel security, which I showed you here, right? Mike's father went to look at the security. He saw it. It in the bag, the backpack. Thank you, Smiley Devil. He had several €100 in cash, his mobile phone, and he had several other things that he'd need for the day, water and stuff. The backpack had disappeared. The police could not find it. Bernd then went out to the scene and he looks everywhere. His father, he's been to Malta 3 times by this point, all to look for this backpack because he needs answers. Thank you, Carrie. Never found it. The GoPro camera that he was wearing at the time of this alleged fall is gone. Now, we wonder what's on that GoPro camera. Isn't it weird how someone fell and everything that they had on them worth money disappeared? Kaput. Witnesses confirmed that Mike had the GoPro camera throughout the whole holiday, and people had seen him that day on the bike with the GoPro. The GoPro's disappeared. When the father, Bernd, makes a massive deal to authorities that he's not going to go home without this GoPro camera, he believes it may have the last minutes on it of his son's life. Thank you, Tori. They tell him to come to the station and they say, look, we've got his camera. And they try to give him a Canon camera instead. And his father says, that's not his camera. That's not the GoPro. And they're saying, yes, it is. And his dad's like, well, this one doesn't even attach to your head. It's not an action camera. They're like, this is your son's. But it was empty. And that he's like, that's not my son's. He's 17. I paid for the camera. That's not his. I've got videos of my son. It says GoPro in the corner of the videos. Like, this is not his camera. Why would they lie or try to even imitate a camera if it's not true? After Mike was reported missing, his father travelled to Malta for the first time, looked for his son everywhere. He also was on the cliffs when the police found Mike's body, which was absolutely heartbreaking. He was there that day when police went down. It makes you wonder as well, like with the Jay Slater case, like, did you know that Mike was on that cliff? Did you know where his body was? It's only when his father shows up to look on those cliffs all of a sudden, oh, he's there, I've got him. Like, he was underneath a ledge, so how did you all of a sudden spot him when his father turns up on the cliffs for the first time? Mike Mansholt believes his son wore the camera on his belt. The investigating inspectors confirmed 3 times there was a black case, once even in front of a witness. Later, she denies a statement and says there was no GoPro and that his father's made it up. The public prosecutor department of Oldenburg got a letter from Malta, and they say that they basically, this is a tragic fall. His dad needs to get over it. You know, they don't even know if Mike had these belongings or if his father's making it up. They're very strange kind of people in what they say. Okay, so the police, obviously, like I said, I'm just trying to read through it to make sure I'm not saying anything that's going to upset anyone. The police say the police went out to the cliffs, like I said, on the same day they found Mike's body. His dad's there. His dad says the police photographer takes hundreds of pictures, hundreds of the scene, of the case, of the GoPro. He's just literally taking hundreds of pictures, which they should do. Later on, when his dad asked to see the photos, it's about 10. And they're like, this is all we took. And his dad's like, that's not true, because I was there. And I was almost mesmerised by the sound of the clicking because I was in shock. You just found my son's body, so I'm looking at you the whole time, and the click of the camera, and now you're saying these photos don't exist. An investigation file should include the police report. It would contain clues about what the police have been doing in the recent months to track down Mike's missing backpack, his phone, or his GoPro camera. There was also a weird farmer, which I'll just bring up. There was a weird farmer who was out on the cliffs the day his dad was there, and his dad says he went missing on the 18th. They found him on the 26th. His dad kind of says to this farmer, because his farmer's asking questions in broken English, the dad says to his backpack's missing, and the farmer gets really angry, really strange, and starts walking really quickly off the cliff. And his dad's like following him, like, why are you being like that? Why are you being like that? And this guy just takes off, but the police refuse to look into this guy either. Now, when Bert Mansholt gets the file on his son because he requested it, there is only one single page which summarises the known statements, missing organs, and the fact that it says on there was mainly eaten by animals. There's not a single photo. They say they took 10 that day, yet there's no photos. The police report ends the day after the finding of the body. No evidence of a search for a backpack, GoPro, missing organs, a farmer from Dingley who does not appear in the report, the weird one on the top of the cliffs. The answers to the questions of what Maltese authorities are doing is clear, nothing. And I don't want to go into a massive history lesson on the island. So when we talk a little bit more about Mike, because I tried to, this is one of the last pictures ever taken of Mike. It was him and his girlfriend Antonio, thank you Naomi very much, before she flew home. What a wonderful photo. Like, obviously it's a beautiful photo of a holiday snap, right, that unfortunately will be, you know, for his parents, such a sad picture when it should be so hopeful. A young boy that loved to travel. So when we talk about Mike, who he was, his father said he was reliable to the power of 3. He was a friend. Our common hobby together was model flying, model aeroplanes. Together they played Clash of the Clans. They exchanged messages. They talked about women together because he was 17 and his father's best friend. His dad says Mike was just nice. He was a straightforward guy. He loved to travel. Thank you, Trisha. I am his father. I only have positive things to say, he says. Perhaps his greatest passion shared by his son and father was sports. On Mike's 18th birthday on August the 20th, they wanted to run their first marathon in Iceland together. Mike was a trainee at Airbus. He'd beaten hundreds of applicants to the job. He was the best boy in his class when he completed his high school in Offenadick. His father said, "Of course, I am proud of my boy. I was always proud of my boy." The Mansholt family left in 2004 for a famous trip of the world. Mike was 5 years of age, and that's where he got his love of travel for. The desire to travel remained. They were planning to go to the Yukon River in Canada. It was one of Mike's greatest dreams that he never got to do. And this was his first trip alone. He flew to Malta to meet his girlfriend who was doing a language course there. And he was supposed to come home so they could go. So let's talk about this. There are about 7 different scenarios that Mike's father has come up with what happened. That he crashed. Now, the German forensic scientists who have been to Malta with his father say this is virtually ruled out. You cannot crash from this area and fall to the area where he was. That he was accidentally shot by hunters. So there was no bullets in the body from what we know. However, so much of the body was missing by this point. We know that area, several traps were set up where locals would get birds to land on a certain area, feeding the bird, and they would shoot the birds. They seem to enjoy doing that. So that was always kind of one of the things thrown out. He had an accident on the top of the road, was hit by a car, and his body was then placed in that area. Doesn't then explain the missing organs or the fact that he had no injury to his body. So it would be a disposable site. Mike had been the victim of a robbery. This may be an organ robbery or maybe just his organs, and maybe the coroner have removed his organs and they realise they fucked up and they're just trying to excuse it. Mike has been killed by organ traffickers, which is something we hate to think of, right? But when you have a case with a boy with all of his organs missing, that has to be considered. What really upsets me is the Maltese authorities. Did you say Maltese? Yeah, authorities have tried to say they think he commits suicide, and the reason they give for this is they say, well, his girlfriend had left the day before, but he was about to go back and be reunited with her. He just stayed for an extra couple of days due to flights. I don't know, Julie. I don't know how they've done it, because if we hear from the first coroner that there is no cuts to the body, etc., do we believe them when everything else they said had been a lie? By the time they got him back to, I was going to talk about this in a minute, but as you're asking me now, I'll explain now. If they've taken him back and they've not even embalmed him, the fact you haven't embalmed him would speed up decomposition. So have you tried to cover for something like organ theft in Malta, which is going to stop tourism? So have you, all of his organs pretty much, Shayna, I'll list them again in a second. Have you said there was no marks to his body so that we don't get worried, not book holidays to Malta, etc.? Because you purposely didn't embalm him. Now, in any body, you're going to want them embalmed because your family want to see the body, etc. It is almost unheard of that you would even be able to fly a body back to Germany without embalming him, unless you lied on paperwork. You have to embalm them. If you remember when we were doing, when we were raising the money for the second autopsy of 11-year-old Adriana Young, we knew that she was going to have to be embalmed, but we knew that that may mean that some issues would arise during the second autopsy due to the embalming fluid. But you have to make the decision to do it because it's sanitary, it's clean, it keeps the body fresh for longer. It has to be done. So even though at a later stage there's going to be this kind of other fluid rather than the body's fluid, you have to make that choice to do the second autopsy in America. So the fact they didn't embalm him but said they did is to me the massive neon sign. Thank you, Lulu Sings. A massive neon sign that actually you chose not to do that for a reason. Now, to say he unalived himself simply because his girlfriend left the day before is crazy. He was going to go home soon. He was going home 2 days later. So the Oldenburg back in Germany, the prosecutor said that they believe the case of Mike Mansholt was at least a manslaughter case, and German investigators did launch a request for judicial assistance from Malta and demanded the missing organs. And they said, we do not believe the crash theory. Now, the last thing I looked at, which obviously the father's getting help from, you know, at that time from the German kind of, what should I say, the German embassy. But in 2021, I could see his father was still begging for help and saying, look, I've given up hope now that I'll ever get justice for my son. I just don't know. So this was how the bike was found, because I just found a picture on this article when I was reading it. The bike was found like this. Just found on a flat bit, and his body was found far away from there, underneath rocks, like lower down. It just doesn't make any sense. It was just like on its side. And yeah, his backpack and everything else is missing. And we have to consider that maybe the coroner did actually take out the organs, and like we know he's on YouTube saying, I did 29 autopsies in 3 days. Did he somehow, you know, lose the organs? And he doesn't want to admit to that because it makes no sense. We know, like in the case of like Kendrick, who was found in the rolled up gym mats in America, when his family exhumed his body for a second autopsy, his organs were missing and he was stuffed with newspaper. So we know this happens, that crazy stuff like this happens, because I still can't explain to myself why there's so much missing here, why his GoPro's missing, why all the rest of the stuff is missing. To me, it looks like a robbery and his body's been placed there. It doesn't make any sense. None. So for the person who came in late and asked about his organs, his heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, right kidney, adrenals, urinary bladder, prostate, stomach, small intestine and brain were missing. It just makes no sense.